Science for Everyday Decisions, series by Center for Sustainable Development at the Earth Institute, Columbia University. For your consideration for a more sustainable life through education for sustainable development.
Over the years, how has this field evolved and your practice? I think it's going to be great to hear from you. And we have on the call all our eco ambassadors who have been working on various different issues: plastic pollution, on doing surveys in the school, doing eco activism, working with some public service people, banning plastic in our communities. We also have some teachers who do science education. So we have around 15 participants on our call coming with very different backgrounds, and we would love to hear from you and give us some inspiration or see what we can do in our own, given that we have different age groups and different backgrounds, what we can do in our own lives, in our own communities to take this work forward.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Radhika. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to consider this the first time we're talking. In a couple of months, I'll come back and talk to the group. I'll send you some PowerPoint slides. We'll do some visuals with it. But just as an introduction today to why I am in this fight, what the fight looks like, and where I hope. Because I'm a science teacher and a high school principal. That's my career track. So I have spent 22 years in the classroom. Then I started creating outreach programs for botanic gardens and very effective in engaging young people. So my motivation came from young people, actually. A young girl called Savannah Cullis Suzuki, who was a 12-year-old at the Rio Summit in 1990. And she off that audience of UN experts about not walking the walk, about the urgency with which the environment was falling apart and we were doing little. So hearing her and listening to her give the adults a challenge to do something and to not just talk about doing something motivated me in my life to create the programs and the nonprofits that I've created. So I tell you this because I hope the young people on the phone and their teachers understand their power to influence change. I have done some pretty incredible things in my life and been recognized for it at many levels. And every time I did something pretty great, I was inspired by a young person. So that's my story. And I know that Jane Goodall, one of my heroes, said, that the greatest danger to our future is apathy. And I know your students realize that some people just don't care or don't care enough to do. So in the 2002, I decided, what else can I do besides teach and be a principal and motivate kids and teach biology? And I created a program called the Fairchild Challenge, which allowed young people to find their voice on environmental issues like plastic pollution, like plant blindness, like invasive species, like climate change and things like that. And it succeeded because it had lots and lots of ways for kids who were into design and fashion, art, research, creativity, debate, to participate. So in 2010, when I left the Botanic Garden, I was forming my own nonprofit in Miami, Florida, where I'm from. Well, I'm from Trinidad originally, but I'm living in Miami, Florida now. Here's what happened. The climate scientists locally said, Caroline, we need you to form a nonprofit focused on climate change education because the public is not getting it, the data. And they showed me the data, Radhika. They said, here are the carbon dioxide levels. Here's what has happened in the past, and here's where we're heading. And the data was alarming. So I created the nonprofit CLEO Institute to sort of bridge a divide between the scientists and society. about what is the basics of what's happening with climate change. Why is it a crisis? What are the disruptions and the bad effects that we're having and are expecting? And then what are the solutions that we need to do, like right now, and then scale them up? So the CLEO Institute was really born out of a need for the climate scientists to get the word out on urgency and the need to act. And with my desire to build agency, it help people find out what works for you. So we are educated for engagement. You understand? When we do our work at CLEO, and we do everything from the top down and bottom up. So we work with students and teachers, K-12 across disciplines. We work with elected leaders and chambers of commerce. We work with frontline communities and under-resourced communities. Um, and what we are finding is that once people get the knowledge and find a way that they can contribute to the solution, they're taking action. So I want to focus this particular conversation on what the CLEO Institute is doing with young people and with teachers. And so CLEO, CLEO, stands for Climate Leadership Engagement Opportunities. So we're really trying to make everybody a leader in the climate world. So there's a youth group that we work with. They're usually middle and high school and college age kids. Excuse me. And they rebranded themselves as Generation CLEO, a generation of climate leaders. And this group has mobilized over the past 10 years of CLEO existence into a really active group of kids who plan strikes and rallies and summits and symposia, and who are getting trained by CLEO experts to be climate speakers and CLEO speakers so that they can communicate accurately the science, the seriousness of the solutions. And these young people are taking the world on fire. A little example. So here in Miami, where I'm from, not as big as New York, but pretty big. Miami-Dade County, it's about 3 million people. And more than half of the people are at or below the poverty level. So it's an area, much like New York, that have a lot of very rich and a lot of very poor. Most of us are in the middle somewhere. So the young people decided that they are going to demand that our elected officials act. They were very motivated by Greta Thunberg, who is that young Swedish kid with the long braids who decided she was going to strike for climate. I hope your students know about her. But our students took that charge and in a very unapologetic way started asking the Miami government to declare a climate emergency. And in their strikes, that was all student-led, all student-run, all student-organized. They got everything from the permits and the photographer to the speakers list and everything. We had an incredible turnout, almost 1,000 people. And the students were the students. I was walking around trying to help control the masses, and one little girl, maybe 8 years old, was pulling on my shirt. And she said, Miss, can I talk? And I said, well, what do you want to talk about, darling? She goes, my future. So we took her up to the microphone and had her tell her story about what she was concerned with. And what these young people are saying is because of your inaction in solving the problem, because of your action in causing the problem, we don't see a livable world for ourselves, and we demand it. That you declare an emergency and that you take action. And what has happened? 6 different cities in Miami-Dade County have declared climate emergencies because of these kids. And they're making a whole lot of progress. Now, with coronavirus, we are doing it remotely. And we're reaching the elected officials on Twitter and on Instagram. And we are calling them out. and we're celebrating the ones who are doing the right thing. So it's been quite a joy for me to see young people take the microphone. But what we make sure we do is we challenge them to know the material before they start speaking so they don't speak rubbish, if you know what I mean. So I think I'll stop there for a minute and see if there are any questions or clarifications that people need. And then I'll go into a little bit more descriptions of what people can do.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any questions?
I want to know anything. Are there schools taking on the climate change? Are teachers talking about climate?
Vidya, anyone who wants to talk about their schools and what are they doing?
Um, our schools in New Jersey are in Melbourne, so they don't really talk about the climate in any of our classes. So and therefore, out of school, we are having to ask them to make changes um, to maybe their utensils used in schools. So one of our elementary schools has removed all of their plastic utensils and cutlery and have put biodegradable utensils. And I'm writing to our middle school principal to see if he responds to replace all plastic with biodegradable utensils. So we hope to make that change.
Wow, well done. Listen, every bit helps. Are they talking about light bulbs? Do most of the schools have the LED light bulbs now?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Well, that's something you can do right away. You can just ask your principal or assistant principal if the school light bulbs are LED. And if they're not LED, say, how can I help us? Because it might cost a lot of money to get all LED lights, but the money you will save from the wasted electricity that comes from the incandescent bulbs, which too many of them still use, the fluorescent ones, that they pay back, they get back their money in costs saved from electric bill. So I would challenge you to do that, and thank you so much for doing the biodegradable utensils. It's a beautiful.
Thank you.
So, Caroline, I think you have actually raised a very good point in terms of LED because we have a green team or a school green team in all the schools, and basically the parents are one parent is assigned to the schools, and this year was zero wastage, theme was zero wastage, and next year is energy, making schools energy efficient. So maybe, for me, energy efficient and is not really concrete till you give me good examples. So this one was a very concrete example which we can start with, and it's easy to understand, and we can say that at least we can start with this. So any other tips also on making schools energy efficient will be very helpful, Caroline. Also, I mean, given that most of us, all the moms here at least, are all immigrants, I feel that when I came here, in many ways, it was a very advanced country. But in terms of being climate conscious, in terms of being environmentally conscious, I find it to be much more backward from the places that we belong to. So, how did this really happen? Where did we slip in terms of the policy measures? In terms of whether this was never really discussed in amongst the policy makers, and why are we still fighting the LEDs, and why are we still fighting recycling and making all these small changes in the schools that can afford to do much more? So I see a disconnect there, and maybe that was always there in my head. So I wanted to, since you're an expert, I wanted to ask you this question. How did we come to the stage where we are discussing things that could have been done 15, 20 years back?
Right. I wish I had the answer. I have a couple suggested answers, but do you know that in April we will be celebrating the 50th Earth Day celebration? 50 years of Earth Day celebrations, and we still have this disastrous approach to environmental stewardship. It's really frightening. I was elated to be selected as one of 11 people in the country to serve on the NEAC, the National Environmental Education Advisory Council. That is a mandate from Congress that a group gets together every 4 or 5 years and writes a statement report on environmental education in the country. I was on 2012, 2014, 3 years, all right? And on that committee of 11 people, I told them that we should write 1 page, and it should not be a long document, and the opening sentence should be, "We have failed." Because I come from Trinidad, a third world country in the Caribbean, a little island, Trinidad and Tobago. And while we were not doing as much as I wanted, I could understand the shortcomings. But I'm like you, Radhika. I come to the United States, I see progress, I see technology, I see advancement, ingenuity, but I don't see that being appointed by the federal and state governments. I don't. And I tell you, the Obama administration named me a climate resilience champion of change. And every time I went to the White House, I gave them help. I didn't think they were doing enough. I said, look, guys, you're still using natural gas, and that's not a bridge fuel. And when I think about what Obama did compared to what the administration before him, the George W. Bush administration, did, and what the current administration is doing, I'm like alarmed. Because if I was upset with Obama, how do you think the scientists and people like me feel about the current administration rolling back all of these things? I think the problem why environmental stewardship has not taken off at the level it needs to is money, is the economic driver. America believes in a capitalist way of thinking. I happen to think capitalism is okay with rules that apply to everybody. You want to make a lot of money and you want to do it the right way, you go do it. But to make money by polluting our oceans, polluting our rivers, and polluting our air, and we're allowing you to do that and even giving you subsidies to do that, makes no sense. And because I think the economic people, and I hope your audience can keep up with me, because the economic engine drives everything. They have now driving politics. So when you have the economic will and the political will, making sure that we're not making the changes we're making so they can continue to make money doing the wrong things, we can't make progress. And so I don't know if the group here, because this is a little bit of civics as well, you need to understand that not just changing light bulbs, you've got to do that, but you've got to fight the system. You've got to know when to support climate action. You've got to know when people are telling you that natural gas is cleaner, that it's a lie, it's not cleaner. You have to be able to say that this is my future and my life. And if you are going to take money from the government to continue polluting, then we have to remove the government and start over. So there's a little legislation that passed a while ago called Citizens United. And Citizens United, which happened in the Bush administration, gives corporations the same right as human beings. As a result of Citizens United, oil companies and gas companies and coal companies and people who were doing all of these dirty fuels and polluting the rivers and the streams and the air could now invest in politicians and give money to candidates. So now let's suppose I was running for the mayor of New York, or I was running to Senate or Congress, and I have to raise money to run. You cannot run without money. You have to buy ads, you have to hire staff, you have to knock on doors. And if an oil company gave me $2 million or $100,000 because they want me to win, don't you think that they ought to expect that I would support their causes, like more oil, more coal, more gas? So right now we have a major problem with the environmental degradation, from plastic pollution to warming worlds and not enough air conditioning for people who need them, especially here in Miami, rising seas, salt water intruding. We can't grow the food we need when the salt water is coming in. So we have this perfect problem happening, and we do not have the economic and the political will to change it. Because the oil people want to continue making money, the gas people want to continue making money, and the coal people. And we have a president right now who likes that idea. And if they keep supporting the president and other people running for Congress, then they're putting people in place to do their bidding. So think about that for a minute, because I think when young people ask me what's my role, I tell them, lower your carbon footprint. You need to live your smallest life, eat less meat, change your light bulbs, harass your school principal to get those light bulbs straight. Make sure that you understand the urgency of the science, and then use the power of your voice, use the power of your purse. Every time you spend $1, know that you're spending it with the right kind of company, and use the power of your vote. As soon as you turn 18, make a pledge. You will vote in every election, every time. And you will make sure the people you're voting for understand your concerns about climate. So the whole situation we have in America it can easily be fixed, but we don't have right now the political and economic will to fix it.
Thank you, Caroline. I think that was
You said
mission.
uh,
Vidya,
gas and like the oil people would want to.
repeat your question again. It was muffled. Hi Vidya, can you repeat your question again? It was muffled. Was it Vidya asking or?
It was me asking, yeah.
Yes.
So you said that the people who are making oil would want to keep making oil, and that the people who are making gas would want to keep making gas. But the thing is, they might only be making it because they don't have an alternative. Like that might be how they are supporting their families to live. So if they were presented with an alternative, then they would switch maybe. So then they would be outnumbered, therefore moving majority of people to an eco-friendly way to like produce gas and oil.
Like solar and wind, maybe, right? So
What?
you're really sharp. You're making a lot of good connections. But I'm telling you, those things exist. The Obama administration, he was closing the coal mines and building solar plants there and training the people. So it wasn't like, go home, forget you, you don't need a job. It was like, instead of $13 an hour in a coal mine, we're going to pay you $15 an hour, and you're going to make solar panels, and we're going to train you. But the people in the area were bought by the oil company. So the oil company has to want it. So there are farmers in Texas and Oklahoma who no longer have oil drilling because they're making more money out of 2 wind turbines on their property than they were making from oil and gas. So your point is absolutely correct, but the answer is some of that is happening and they're trying to block it. So you know what they did? I'm listening to one of the Dakotas, North or South Dakota. The oil company was throwing parties for the people and celebrating and providing childcare just to keep them supporting oil and not letting the solar panel company come in. So it's a little bit of greed, right? So my point to the oil, gas, and coal companies is you can make a lot of money doing the right thing. Just switch over. But what they want to do is because they already have the infrastructure for coal mining and oil and refining, they just want to squeeze the last bit of money out of it before they move on to solar and wind. But I'll tell you, they're moving on because the cost of solar and wind has come down so much that it's much more cost effective and you're able to make a whole lot more money than you used to. Here's another problem I want you to think about. Right now, our country, our government subsidize, pay money, or don't take taxes from oil, coal, and gas company so that Americans always have enough oil, coal, and gas. We should be paying about $10 a gallon for gas at the gas station. But because the government is subsidizing it, we only pay $2.50 or whatever it is, right? In a way, we are letting the oil companies make more profits doing the wrong thing. We used to subsidize wind and solar during the Obama years, and the price dropped. Now we no longer subsidize wind and solar, we subsidize oil, coal, and gas. So what we have to do is divest. We have to say, stop subsidizing oil, coal, and gas, start subsidizing solar, wind, geothermal. And who is we? We are the voters. That's who I'm talking about. We have to tell the government, we do not want you subsidizing this anymore. And that's why the kids are taking to the street. That's why they're marching. They want change. They want to make their own little footprint changes at home. And eating less meat is important. And thank goodness a lot of them are buying into that. We don't say don't eat meat because some people here are just crazy carnivores, but we say eat less meat. But you also have to understand the system that we're living in, and that has to change. You all should come to Miami for a field trip. I'll show you around. Any other questions?
Ishika, any question from your end?
Hello?
Yeah,
Hi.
Oh, sorry, it was on mute. I actually had a question. I actually wanted to say something. Yeah, we should like follow the example of like the Nordic countries, like Denmark, who are like investing like heavily in wind and solar, and their carbon emissions their carbon footprint has dropped significantly in the last few years. Denmark and the other Nordic countries.
So why don't you think why don't we do that?
Yeah, as you were saying, like these special interest groups, like these oil and gas companies like Exxon, they like the Secretary of State under Trump, Rex Tillerson, was the CEO of ExxonMobil.
Exactly. It's like putting the fox in charge of the hen house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a problem. But I think the United States is making a big mistake, because I see the United States as a leader globally, and we should be leading the manufacturing of photovoltaics and wind turbines. No, we ceded that to the Chinese, and they're doing it the right way. So we're losing time, and we're creating. If you understood the parts per million, and maybe I'll try and do that with you, so that I can leave you with the sense of urgency that I have. And I try to light fires in people, because, people say, I'm a teacher, I'm a principal, I believe in education as a tool for change. And they go, what really is education? And I have a pencil holder here that has a quote about education. Can you read it out loud for me?
Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is.
So I'm an arsonist. I want to light fires in people. I don't want to just fill your pail and fill your head with information. I want to give you fight. And so numbers help you understand, right? So all the energy, all the sunshine, all the energy that's coming into the planet all day long doesn't stay on the planet. It gets absorbed, it gets converted from one form to another, and eventually energy is also going back out. So we have energy coming in, we have energy going out. That's our energy budget. You have some planets that have no atmosphere. So all the energy that comes in goes out. Those planets are frozen because they don't hold any energy in, right?
Yeah.
We have some planets that have such a thick atmosphere that when the energy comes in, not enough gets back out. And they are very, very hot. They're on fire. But Earth is like Goldilocks. Earth's atmosphere has enough greenhouse gases in it that energy comes in and some energy goes back out, but some gets trapped. So our temperature, as we know it, gives us winter, spring, summer, and fall, and allows us and the other species to live on the planet. What has been happening on Earth, though, is our atmosphere has been accumulating way too many of these greenhouse gases, which is trapping way too much of that outgoing energy. So while we like greenhouse gases, we want to keep some of the energy in, we don't want to keep as much. And the number of greenhouse gases is measured in parts per million. When I was born, in the Earth's atmosphere, the number of carbon dioxide greenhouse gas molecules was 300 parts per million, just a number. And that number allowed energy to come in and a lot of energy to go out, but it trapped some energy.
Yeah.
The scientists told us, you be careful. You do not let those parts per million go way past 300. Don't let it go past 350. Have you ever heard of the organization 350.org? 350.org is a climate organization that was formed to try and get the world not to keep burning oil, coal, and gas, and to keep the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide below 350 parts per million. I can show it to you on a graph next time, but here's the problem. We went past 300, we went past 350, we went past 380, we went past 400 parts per million, we went past 410, we're at 416 parts per million now, and we're heading to 500. So we're creating a planet that has not experienced the kind of warming we're heading for in about 3 million years. So it's very scary. Not only do we have to stop burning oil, coal, and gas and find other ways to get energy, like solar, wind, and geothermal, we have to find a way of taking out some of those greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, like planting more trees. Trees are naturally plucking carbon dioxide all day long in photosynthesis to make food and oxygen. So we know what to do, just have to do it. Does that make sense?
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Any other question?
It's not a question. I feel because there is a lack of education in the school system, it's more about each individual, how they take this and they do the things at their home. Like for us, probably all the eco ambassadors in this group and their moms are filling their kids like, okay, do this, do that. This is going to be like LED, as you said, an example. I was just telling my daughter that in our house everything is LED. Why we have chose? Because the electricity, it saves our electricity. But I don't think so that education is anywhere given in the school system or anything of that sort. Either the education system should include it, or is it like it is only the practice for the people to just train their kids, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. How do you see it as?
Well, you know, the schools have got to turn on. So we've created a program for schools called CLIP, Climate Leadership Information Program. And we're training 12th and 11th graders to be climate speakers, and they're training 9th and 10th graders to be climate speakers, and they're training 7th and 8th graders to be speakers, and they're training. So what we're doing is we're building a mentor program for people to talk about climate change more. If all we talk about it more with our parents, with each other, then when we see articles or we see little news feeds coming on, we aren't ignoring, we're reading it and learning it more. So it's important, really important, to talk about it. And I would say to the eco ambassadors, maybe you could put yourself through a little bit of climate study. Maybe I could do a climate 101 for you remotely, well, you could do it yourself. And you ask your principal if on parent night, when all the parents come back to school, you could do 10 minutes in assembly to beg and implore the parents to start talking about climate change and start taking action, beginning with being aware of candidates' point of view and supporting candidates that get it, lowering their own carbon footprints at home, from light bulbs to the amount of water they're wasting or not wasting, brushing their teeth and taking showers, stop the baths completely, and then all these other things, eat less meat that we've talked about. So if you young people can find your voice and share your voice, you have no idea. You can say the same thing I'm saying and they'll hear you. People love hearing the voices of young people speaking truth to power, saying things that matter in a way that shows that they get it. You get the urgency of climate change and you get the need for action. So I would really empower you to come up with a little climate message, public service announcement, something, and start spreading it either through assemblies or through social media or something.
Hello.
Hi, are you there still?
Thank you, Carol, for sharing. This is really informative. I'm John from Rwanda.
Yes, I Rwanda.
Yeah, for us as people who are living in the third world, we face a number of challenges. One being people's mindset. We need to work on awareness to ensure that people really understand the benefits of this, but also, and most importantly, is affordability, because most of the people are poor. And so I'm asking myself, because at one point you said you declared that you had failed, and I'm asking myself, could it be because of the issue of affordability? Because in the first world, I believe people have that clear mindset. They understand what they're supposed to do, but they are not doing it.
Right.
So could it be that the alternatives are not affordable? Because that is the biggest challenge we are having here. We are telling people the long-term benefits, but for them, they're more focused on the short-term costs. So could it be the same scenario or that led to your failing, or it is just because of people just ignoring it altogether? Thank you.
It's a great point. And you know, are you all familiar with the Paris Agreement?
Yes, yes.
So the Paris Agreement from 2015 that gave the whole world a lot of hope. The United States has done some damage by pulling out because they're no longer leading. They're giving other countries a chance to take their foot off the gas in terms of doing it the right way. But what happened in the Paris Agreement speaks to Rwanda and third world countries like mine. They created a fund for developing countries to subsidize all of their power plants so that they can skip the coal and oil by having very affordable solar and wind. And they actually have the universities in each country researching which forms of energy renewable energy will work best. So the affordability aspect is a big hindrance. So here in Miami, we have, like I tried to tell you, 60%, 1.5 million people are trying to make the meal on the table. They don't know where they're living. 5,000 of our students are homeless on any given day. So we have a lot of poverty, not like Rwanda, not like Trinidad, but bad. And we do climate trainings in those communities with them. And what we're finding out is that they love the knowledge and they love the chance to write letters to their elected officials. So we do a lot of training. We listen to them. We empower them. We told them how to prepare for emergencies. We bring in the city and the county to explain what resources they have. And then we have them go speak to the commission about what matters to them. Because, you know, when you're poor, it's easy for them to take advantage of you. We have a utility group here in Miami that's rotten, just absolutely rotten. And every time we try to push a solar initiative, they kill it. They want to do more natural gas. And they convinced the poor people in the state of Florida that the solar was bad for them. And so by educating them and telling them, no, solar is not bad, it's cheaper, and here's what it does, they are now able to vote in their own interests. So I think two things should give you some comfort, that even the poorest of us want to understand the problem and want to know what doing the right thing looks like. That's one thing. And the second thing is that the world understands that if coal and oil and gas are so much cheaper for the third world countries, that's what they're going to use. So there is a movement to subsidize it for developing countries so that they don't have to suffer through the coal, oil, and gas that we did getting to where we are now. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Because even the sources of energy, for instance, we are using today are not that affordable. But again, even the alternatives that are coming are still at a high cost. So that is one of the reasons that people are not moving into this. But of course, with the awareness also, awareness creation, the political will, because we need to have that supported, having right policies in place. So there are quite a mix of challenges. But I think I'm getting your point from the subsidized point of view.
There's no other way. It cannot work any other way. And the developed countries and the rich countries have absolutely everything to gain from subsidizing it for the developing world. I'll tell you something else. There's something called climate refugees and climate migration. I do not know the geology of Rwanda, but I know the geology of Florida, where I live. And I'm telling you, in 20, 30 years, we are not going to be able to live where we live now. I'm going to show you the view from my apartment balcony and how beautiful it is. You ready?
Yeah.
Tell me if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Wow. And are you trying to make us jealous? Because it is kind of
wow.
here.
Okay, I want to tell you something. 20 years from now, that will not be there.
Sorry?
The seas are expected to rise 3 more feet. And the roads are not going to be raised quickly enough. And the flooding that happens on the streets of Miami when there's a high tide, I'm trying to plug in my phone, yeah. When there's a high tide, the flooding that happens is unbelievable. And up to your knees in ocean water coming up through the drain pipes. It's a very low-lying state, especially the southern part. So a lot of us already starting to look for our next home. And so in Rwanda, and if you look at the IPCC report, Radhika used to write that down and they should look it up. In the IPCC report, that's the global report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it will tell you region by region what to expect. So there are people in Rwanda that might have to move to different areas of Rwanda or out of Rwanda. Florida, in the next 30 to 50 years, you're only going to be able to live in the central and northern part of Florida. So it's more than just the energy problem. It's food and water vulnerability. Because what's happening in the changing climate is Miami gets 60 inches of rain a year. We still get 60 inches of rain, but we're getting it all at the same time. In Boynton Beach, up the road from where I live, 14 inches of rain fell in 24 hours, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So the rain is falling all at the same time. And places that have drought are having extended periods of drought. And fires are starting. So it's not, people worry a lot about sea level rise. I worry about sea level rise and heat and food and water vulnerability. I worry about the cases of asthma. I worry about people dying because they don't have air conditioning in their homes in Miami, and it's so hot. Even now in March, it's so hot. So it's many problems. So the need for us to demand urgent action is as high as possible. In fact, they tell us that if we don't seriously make a change away from oil, coal, and gas and eating meat in the next 10 years, it could be really dystopic, a really dangerous future for life as we know it. I think there'll always be some form of life, but not the biodiversity you and I recognize and love so much. You know, I have little kids coming up to me and saying, Mrs. Lewis, we're trying to save the turtles. And I'm saying, well, good for you, darling. I love turtles. But in my mind, I know we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. All coral reefs could be gone by 2050. So the urgency of the climate crisis is the umbrella on every environmental crisis that you are concerned about and all the social justice problems you're concerned about. So I see this problem of climate change as something that is um, the most urgent thing we have to act on. So as you are working towards plastic reduction, tie it to climate change, tie it to the need for us to make an economic and political change to the way we're doing things. Because the global picture is not pretty. And America, United States, needs to be a leader, needs to lead the whole world in doing this even better.
Yeah. So,
Janvi?
yeah, I wonder why, the education department, in a country like United States is not inculcating environmental education. Like we have for middle school and high schoolers, you just have a small elective, but shouldn't it be at the core of our education? Because these are the people who are going to go out in the workforce or going to be politicians. So if we inculcate, why isn't the education sector like, why haven't we organized this in a better way? Why isn't it part of our curriculum? And what needs to be done? How can we, bring it at that level where, right from elementary school, we are inculcating this in our children? We've had enough time, like, as you said, like Earth Day has been celebrated since 50 years. So why isn't this part of our education? Why isn't this a major, something that is debated just like human rights and all on university campuses?
Well, I think it's the same thing I've been saying. It's the special interest groups, because Common Core was created by Republican governors. And when Obama embraced it, they hated it. Climate education does not bode well. In fact, we in the climate education field are getting pushback. The Heartland Institute, a group of conservatives, produced over 1 million documents about why the climate crisis is a hoax and sent it to all of the science teachers in all of the public schools in the country. So there's a deliberate effort by some people to make the information less accessible and to create doubt about the seriousness of the problem. So I'll tell you what the solution is from my point of view. I don't ask for permission. We created a class for our Miami-Dade County teachers, kindergarten, pre-kindergarten to 12th grade. It's called Climate Across the Curriculum. And we teach them how to include climate change in what they're already doing, not as a separate thing. So the art teachers and the English teachers, and so now the kids are creating a poster contest to talk about greenhouse gases, or they're doing public service announcements, or they're researching the history of oil. And there's so many novel ways. And the teachers are grateful because they don't even need another curriculum. They're so exhausted. They just need projects and little one-offs, little small things that provoke it. But most importantly, we like the PSAs when the teachers make the kids do it because the parents get to see it. So we tell them, all right, your PSA this month is for parents. What's your message? How will you deliver it? Your PSA next month is for principals, it's for administrators. And quite frankly, it's about infiltrating the system without asking for permission. and getting shot down. Because the teachers who want to talk about it need help. And those who don't want to talk about it never will. So I would rather go with the 70% who really want to do something about it and give them the tools and the ideas and the strategies. So that's how I would approach it. And parents need to help too. Parents need to sort of like celebrate the kids who are taking this on. When the kids going to strike, if we ever get over coronavirus, they need to go strike with the kids.
Lead
It's.
by example, yeah.
I wrote a wonderful op-ed for the Miami Herald before the big student strike in September last year, calling all the parents and teachers to come strike with the kids. Don't hold it against them. Come with them. And it was pretty well received, I must say. I do get pushback sometimes, but I don't take it on.
Caroline, you're totally an inspiration, and I think the Zoom talk doesn't do justice to your expertise. We need to have more sessions with you, and maybe some more concrete sessions on what we can do in schools, what we can do as educators, some skills, some tips. Maybe out of the 10 things that you suggest, maybe we can pick up 4 things that we can do, but do it concretely in the school.
Yeah. I
So-
have a ton to share, and I also I consult on the side, so I could come up for a week and spend time with you and do things. So tell me what you want to do. Your ambassadors truly need not just fire in their belly; they need to know what their next step is. And I tell them all the time, you have 2 scales you have to measure yourself on: your climate knowledge and your climate action. And so I say to them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your climate science? How much do you know? 1, I know nothing. I know some people are freaked out. 10 is I'm a climate scientist and I study the atmosphere and the oceans and I know. Where are you? And they say a 5 or 6. I said, well, let's move up 1 notch. And that's our goal, to continue to learn. And on the climate action, where are you? 1 is I don't talk about it. I'm an island, leave me alone. 10 is I don't shut up about it. Nobody likes me anymore. Nobody wants to see. I have nowhere to go for Thanksgiving. so, so the idea is to make sure that people understand it's a journey, but you need to get on like now and learn as much as you can and open your mouth and find the thing that calls to you. Anyway, why don't we say this is the beginning of something beautiful, and we'll try and do more with you.
That's perfect, Caroline, and we'll make up some program or something, and let's get some enrollment. The leaders of our community is here, Janvi, Nishika's mom, and we have Nidhi here, everyone, and then our program, Center for Sustainable Development, all our people.
Right.
So we can definitely come up with something concrete and give you a plan of what we want you to, work with us on and identify the skills that we are weak in. And but thanks for this inspiration talk. I don't know if anyone else has any. Nidhi has a question. Nidhi, yes.
Hi, Lenny.
Hi. Hello. So this has been so informative, and this last bit, because I'm an educator myself, I teach in a college. So I was going to ask, is this on the CLEO website, the scale 1 to 10? I really liked it.
No, that's in my head. But but I can work with you on that. There's you can make up your own.
Yeah, let's create a scale. I love that scale. I love the idea that, we should approach all these youngsters and including ourselves. If we go out to talk about climate, then we should ask ourselves on these scales, what is my climate science, like, from 1 to 10? And then, of course, my climate activism. So I really like that. And I'd love to develop a scale on that. Perhaps it doesn't have to be as stratified as 1 to 10. It can even be like, 1 to 5 or 2, 4, 6, 8 or something like that.
The main thing is to let them know we're all on a journey and nobody knows everything,
Nobody knows everything, but, at least you'll give them a sense of tool. Like, what should they be approaching? They need to be thorough on their science when they approach, because that's where most people will combat you. They'll say, you know what? this has always happened in the world. So this is not new. Global climate change is not new, right? So you want to come back with science and statistics and so on. And then, as you said, the zeal and the activism has to be there. So how are you with it? And I
Right.
mean, I would love for all of us to get to point 10 where nobody wants us and we're in an island by ourselves. but,
That's
but,
just right.
but,
But I gotta
yeah.
tell you, that second scale, that climate action and talking about it, is even more important than moving up on the science. You know, one thing I learned, I as a science teacher, I could break down the basic science for a 7th grade level, and everybody can get it. That's all the real science you need. And so we do a climate 101, and then so we explain how to connect the dots for people. But it's the engagement. It's how you talk about it, who you talk to about it. Do you vote? Do you talk to people who are voting? Do you advocate for energy efficiency? Do you advocate for eating less meat? My husband, when I came home and I said, honey, we have to eat less meat. He said, Caroline, don't push your luck. I said, honey, let's just try meatless Mondays. Right? Now we're meatless 3-4 times a week. And we don't even miss it. And when we do eat meat, it's a small piece of chicken or something. Because the agriculture industry has been a dirty secret, especially the beef and the meat industry, you know? And that's something you can take charge of. I didn't know how bad meat was until I started diving into this. So, and then lecturing to people about you can't eat meat is not the way to approach it. They say all of these things you do will help. Which ones can you commit to? So you invite them to get on the journey, and you'll be surprised. A year later, they're doing everything, but you're not making them feel that they're not part of it if they're not doing everything. So there are a lot of techniques I can share, and I will with you. And, you know, CLEO is expanding its role, because when you think about what CLEO is, it's an organization that is a broker between the scientists and the universities and the public at large. And so we can pull together a panel discussion. We can get experts in the business community who are doing the right things. We can get people who are elected. We can get educators. We can get lawyers. And people like that credibility. So there's talk about CLEO LA, CLEO Chicago, CLEO New York. So we can train maybe you to host the CLEO office there and to take on this role of brokering the information and the science and how to engage. Because people need it. People really need it. You know?
And
I
then
run.
what I noticed is, sorry, please go ahead.
I'm going to have to sign off in about 2 minutes.
I know. So just wanted to thank you for your talk, and we can definitely take on more of your expertise. And now we know who the right person is. So we'll get back to you. Right?
You got it, Radhika. Thank you. And I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person in Miami, but that will come.
Yeah, I'm sure it will happen sometime soon, Caroline. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for being here with us. And then Monday we'll start again. Remember, tomorrow is Saturday and Sunday. We are holiday. We have weekends tomorrow and day after. So take it easy. And
But
then,
let me tell your students one thing. Is like, don't doubt for a minute that they can influence adults, because they do. And I'm living proof of that. Okay?
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.